All right, so 2012 Nissan Versa. This is the 1.8 liter in it, which many of them do, or the 1.6 liter. Getting near 100K, spark plugs have never been replaced, so still has the OEM Denso plugs in it. We ended up picking up some NGK Iridium plugs, which I highly recommend going OEM always, but they did not have the Denso ones in stock anywhere. So the NGKs will work fine. You know, I just recommend going with like NGK, Denso, or Bosch typically. Don't go near, you know, like Autolite or any of the other brands unless it's an American car. And as far as checking the plugs go, if you want to be able to, you know, just check one to see if they've been replaced or not, this one right here on the far right side of the engine, nearest to the transmission, is going to be the easiest to check. We're going to have to take the intake plenum off because sadly this isn't really a card that, to my knowledge, you can cheat on and, you know, get under or around it. So it's not a super hard thing to do. We do have 4 new plugs. We also have a new intake plenum gasket, which that's going to be important. You want to replace the gasket that's down here too, because, you know, there's no reason to leave a 100,000 mile gasket on there because it'll likely leak if you try to just reuse it. So let's go ahead and start by getting off some things that are kind of easy to get off that we can just use pliers for. They do make, you know, special tools to be able to get these hose clamps off, but pliers have always worked just fine in my opinion. All right, so we got that off and that just kind of clips in there. We probably don't need to take the other end off because once we get the whole plenum off, this should just come off with the plenum. Take this whole entire intake tube and just kind of put it off to the side. So I'm gonna go ahead and make the executive decision to take this guy here off. And it'll just pop up. All right, am I on the money? Yep, on the money. All right, 8mm for most of the hose clamps probably, except for this one here. So it's probably either gonna be 8 or 10 for most of the hose clamps at this point. All right, so to get that back on, we might have to do a little bit of wiggle work, but you can see that's basically out of the way now. And to get to some of this stuff, we might need to just take the other end off, which I'm just, you know what, just gonna go ahead and do just to make things a little bit more simple and so that you guys can see everything well. So once again, just another hose clamp at the other end. I don't think there's any more tubes coming off of this intake here, so it should be some squeeze. All right, tube is off. That makes things a little bit easier to get to. So I'll go ahead and shine a light over here. So as you can see, throttle body does have a pretty big connection here, which we're gonna take off. That just literally, you push on a little pin right here, and then you just pull while the pin's being pushed down. And obviously be careful with a lot of these plastic connectors because this is a 2012 and stuff like that likes to break usually. So we'll just put that off to the side. So now we're gonna go ahead, take this guy here off, and obviously try to make sure, you know, that you remember to put all this stuff back on. Once again, another hose with a little hose clamp. These are just some angled, really long needle nose. Yeah, there we go. All right, that's what it was. So this is not tack welded on or anything like I thought it would have been. That was just a OG bolt with a nut in it. And obviously try to make sure, if you have like a magnetics parts tray, this would be a good time to use something like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and actually, look at that, we got a couple of empty ones over here. It's our lucky day. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab one of these. This will just make sure that if you, cause you know, I often just do this. You can see I've already made a mess. And this is a really good way to lose a bunch of stuff. So we'll put it off to the side, and even if I accidentally bump it or anything, in theory, we shouldn't lose everything. Just some of the stuff that we need, right? All right, so we have another hose clamp fitting right back here. This one's a little bit more difficult to get to, actually. So I think I'll probably use an angle. I think easily back here. You can see I'm doing good. You can see this on the end as well. That wasn't too bad. This is actually one of the least worse, or however you'd say that, intake plenums I've done. Normally they're, you know, pushed way back under the cowl and everything, and they're, you know, they're like right against the firewall. You actually have a lot of room back here to work with, which is nice. Yeah, penetrant might be good for this too, but you know what, we'll just skip that step. That's pretty much it. Just it's in the user, it's pretty big. Also, it looks like it goes, so this is interesting, so it's just going to block this one, yeah, so deal, right? We should have one more. This one's a little bit of tricky, I think. Extension off, it might be just work. It's a little 7 cents, anything. That works. So it's like probably you have the wall side is probably fine. Very sound. It's interesting questions. Just adding something here. Actually, get it now. Just bring it here. Here, wait, zip tie, you know, you see that a million times as a mechanic, and just use a zip tie and just basically tie it back around and it'll be like it never happened. Although I really prefer to keep these intact if I can, because it just looks a million times better. So we got the alternator slash wiring harness wires out of there now. All right, so now, okay, so we're getting somewhere. This actually lifts up decently high now. And once again, I think where I said we still have a bolt, I think that's where our final obstacle is gonna be. Because as you can see, I'm moving it, but then I can see the one point that it's not allowing me to really move. I'm just gonna go ahead and take off the throttle body. That's just using 8mm bolts, as it appears just 4 of them, so it shouldn't be too bad at all. Like I said, there's gonna be 4 of these, and these are all really easy to get to once you get that intake tube off. You know what they say, work smarter, not harder. And I'm working harder. All right, so there's that bolt right there. I really don't, we probably could have gotten to it, because yeah, there's a cutout. Actually, I don't know, you know, it slopes down. We might have not been able to get to it without taking the throttle body off, so due to get to it. So that's gonna be a 10mm. I'm gonna grab a shallow socket so I don't have to take off those 2 hoses, because once again, you know, I like to take off the and sorry, if you guys ever see me just like smacking the crap out of my ratchet, that's just something that I don't even know if any mechanic would recommend that. I've always used it because when you think of how an impact gun works, it's literally hammers that are smacking the shit out of the bolt or nut that you're trying to get off. They typically work better because rather than using twisting strength, they're using basically, you know, hammer strength. They're basically just smacking the crap out of it, which typically is gonna get your bolt or nut out a lot cleaner and, you know, keep it from snapping off. Connector down here. So I don't know, I'm probably gonna have to, actually no I don't, never mind. Okay, hold on, we just gotta do a little bit of wiggling, jiggling. You take this dipstick out of the way, and boom, look at that, whole entire intake came off in one piece. Didn't even come off in piece. Oh my god, look at all that dust we just dropped out. That's one thing you want to do. Make sure that you, look at the little skeleton friend, make sure that you know, take this and get all the crap off of it. If you have an air compressor, blow it off, which I'll do. We're just gonna go ahead and do these one at a time, okay? Because I wanna put the coil packs back exactly how they were, just, you know, for safe reasons, you know, because why not? There's no reason to mix up coil packs and stuff. I am gonna clean the coil packs off with just a towel once again when I got them out. So 10mm bolts to get these guys out. You're gonna wanna kind of twist and wiggle, okay? Don't just try to pull straight out. The problem with these coil packs and any spark plugs in general is the more miles you have, the harder they're gonna be to actually get off of the spark plug, okay? Because they form seal around them, and it's bad, okay? Sometimes, like, they're hard to get off. Sometimes it just literally breaks the actual boots and everything. So this right here, if you guys can see it, is dielectric grease. This is good stuff, it's Permatex. And it's basically, they call it dielectric tune-up grease because, well, it's for tune-ups, like this. This is basically, it's kind of like WD-40, right? It basically acts as a lubricant, but it also helps insulate and seal electrical connections to make sure you don't get water in them. So where we're gonna be doing it is, for one, this is not a necessary part, but because these are sealed, but I do like to add just a little dab, that was a lot, but just add a little dab to the inside of the actual electrical connections. And then this is the most important part, okay? You wanna add dab right just like that inside of the actual spark plug boot hole. This goes for spark plug boots and coil packs. Otherwise, when you go to take them off the next time, you're gonna be sorry. Okay, so 14mm deep well socket, like so. This is a pretty thin wall one as well, so it's nice and easy to fit in there. They like just fits too, which you'll see in just a second. And then a magnet, okay? You can use a magnet or pliers or like the little handy helper grip guys. So this socket literally just fits in there. Like, it actually forms a seal like that you can feel when it goes in. That was a really weird gesture I just did there. So you're just gonna set the ratchet to off and then unscrew. Make sure you push down while you do. You don't wanna strip your spark plug socket out, because that would be, or your actual spark plug out, because that would be awful, wouldn't it? And right now, by the way, if you have a leaking manifold, or sorry, not manifold. If you have a leaking valve cover gasket, this would be the perfect time to replace it, okay? Like, I was actually tempted to just go ahead and buy the valve cover gasket, but I was like, there's no leaking, there's no, you would definitely smell it on the back of the manifold here. Your exhaust manifold's right here, and it leans down. That's where most of your fluid and your oil would end up going and drip onto that manifold, and you smell it burning. We're not getting any of that here. The car didn't have really enough miles yet to even, you know, have it be leaking at this point. Not that it's not possible, but it's not leaking. So we're not gonna replace it. I decided, I'm one of those people that I'm like, oh, you know, while I'm in here, I might as well. But I'm not gonna do that today. I'm just gonna do the bare essentials, which is, you know, I'm here to do an oil change and the spark plugs, you know, just tune up and stuff, and make sure that the air filter and all that stuff's good. All right, so for the intake manifold plenum gasket, this one I don't think is, yeah, these are pretty easy to get out, which is nice. Really, some of these really suck and they just break off in like a million pieces, but of course this one's not super old, so it's not a big problem. So I'm just gonna kind of wipe the openings of these off. I did clean the intake off a little bit, just with a cloth. That I really didn't feel like blowing it off, which maybe I should, because look at everything that just fell right there. But I'm gonna go ahead and open the new gasket up, and obviously take note of which way the old one was installed. These often only really go in like one way. Let's see if there's any difference. Yeah, so as you can see, these little guys here are gonna line up with certain pins on the actual thing. So you see these, they're only gonna line up one way essentially, so you really can't install this like backwards or anything here. So we need to install the new throttle body gasket as well, which came in here. Once again, can only go on one way because it has a nice little dowel that tells us where to put it. And this is, wow, first installation, come on. Sucks. Okay, now that we got that on, we just need to get this around here, which we did. Okay, thank God. That was not too bad. Yeah, sometimes these things are like awful to get on. That wasn't actually too bad at all. So first thing we're gonna do is go ahead and get the actual intake plenum bolts back on. All right, so we got the actual intake plenum and everything back on. So all that's good now, that's sealed. Now we just need to, we're gonna go ahead and do the two mounting bolts. So one of them is just a through hole, which is just this guy right, oh my gosh, thank God that did not fall down there. That would have been upsetting. So that one's just gonna go back through just like we found it. So just like that. And then we're gonna put the nut in the other end. Be careful with these because it would really suck for you to drop them. This one here was kind of a little bit of a B word to get to. All right, got it started, I believe. Kind of hard to tell, honestly. And what I'm doing right now is I'm just holding the socket because it's not, like I said, not tight enough to, maybe now it is. No, it's not. The throttle body back on. All right, so with this, you're probably gonna wanna tighten down opposing corners because there's 4 bolts, so, you know, go vertical with it. Don't tighten one all the way down. All right, we now have all bolts, tray's empty. That's always a good sign. But all bolts are back on, so now we're gonna start putting some hoses back on, and do not forget about the throttle body, you know, the main connector off the harness there, which the car probably wouldn't start without it, so it'd be hard to forget, but, you know, I'm just pointing that out there because I did kind of put the throttle body back on, and, you know, this is just the way that I would usually do things. I'd rather kind of work from, like, right to left, in a sense, because that just kind of helps me to make sure I didn't forget anything important. Difficult to get to, which is going to be more difficult to put back on, right? All right, that's back on. We're going to go ahead and clip this back on. Here's our electrical connector for that. All right, so that should be everything on the left side. So moving over to the right, we have this big connector here. And then this is on the, oh, here it is. I forgot what we did with it. All right, throttle body connector, or sorry, not throttle body connector. Basically the intake tube that goes in between the airbox and the throttle body is being reinstalled now. This part's gonna not be very fun. Okay, maybe it won't be that bad. So now we're gonna go ahead, put this back on, and then we just need to tighten the actual airbox tubes. And see, what I'm happy about this, guys, oh, and don't forget about your little electrical connections here on the harness. But what makes me happy about this, guys, is nobody will ever know that we're in here, okay? And that's how you want everything to go when you work on a car, is you want it to look like, you know, that you didn't work on something. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, you know, you should take pride in your work, but you say, oh, this is clean. It just looks like this car was taken really good care of, and I can say, yeah, spark plugs were done. And someone's not gonna come in here and go, oh gosh, that was half-assed. We know that this was all done right. Everything's clean. We didn't break any connections or connectors. We're putting everything back on correctly. The car, you know, as long as we did everything right, it's gonna run amazing, like brand new, you know, as they say. And we just gotta find the hose clamps. You really don't need to get them too tight. Go grab my girlfriend's keys. Make sure you put this back in. That wouldn't be good. And we're gonna go ahead and start it up and just make sure that, like I said, we don't have a high idle, and make sure that it runs, idles, and, you know, goes through all the RPM ranges smoothly. All right, so car started right up. Obviously the car is not warm, so it's gonna high idle for a second. So we're just gonna let it warm up. Just make sure that we got everything good. But it sounds great. Very smooth sounding idle. I don't hear any issues with it at the moment. I don't hear any like hissing or air leak sounds. So as long as the idle comes down and I can rev the car and it feels and sounds pretty smooth, then I'd say we're good to go. So you can hear the idles coming down. We were at like 1500, and you can see the RPM there just slowly settling down. So go ahead and give it a blip. Yeah, oh yeah, do you hear how smooth, just at 3000 RPM there? And this is a 4-cylinder. 4-cylinders, you know, they don't run very smooth. They're 4-bangers for a reason. And that 3000 RPM was nice and smooth. Idle's still coming down, so I would say this is a job well done. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video and everything. Do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next one.